Now that we have a working concept of what religion is, what is law? Another question upon which libraries have been written. It would be silly to go into the law to seek a definition of what law is, as I did for religion. This would be the equivalent of going to capitalists to ask what capitalism is. The answer in both cases would be that it is the greatest invention since sliced bread. Better yet, it is the greatest invention in all of history. They would say it in more and better sounding verbiage, but the marketing would be the same. Because the point of this podcast essays is to help the working class understand what is going on around and above them in technological society, I am suggesting one attribute of the law that is sufficient to understand what law is from the perspective of the working class. It is something with a socially acceptable monopoly on violence for its normative decisions. By normative, I mean decisions of ultimate value as to what ought to be, decisions of good and evil. From the perspective of the lower social classes, only the law and its rule of law is allowed to have its decisions of good and evil enforced violently, by violence. This is especially true of its decisions regarding what the lower classes ought to be doing. Anyone who enforces their decisions by violence outside the law is by definition illegal and immoral, and thus immoral. If it's illegal, it's got to be immoral. Now, you might object that this makes the law equivalent to the local street gang leader or the armed robber with a gun, or as might makes right. Yes, it does. So what? If the local street gang leader or armed robber takes over a whole town and succeeds in controlling it and passing down the gang's power to others to do the same for generations, then for all practical purposes and conceptually, it is the law. Might does make right. The law of North Korea, Stalinist Russia, and the United States are all law. The only difference is whether and which, if any, of these laws are consistent with one's religion. That is, are consistent with a sincere and meaningful belief as to what law ought to be. If religion and law become one, the question is answered in the affirmative. Where religion and law are one, law is what it ought to be, religiously, morally, and by definition.